Thank you. Thank you, Amélia. Thank you, Rodrigo, for the invitation and the possibility to showcase our projects that we are doing or that we did in the office. So here you can see Peter Hutter, so that you have a bit of face and to know the other person that is part of the atelier. We started our office around 12 years ago in a small container in Zurich, always in two. We are still working more or less with 2 persons in the office, and we kind of move away from Zurich to the region that is called St. Gallen in the north of Switzerland, if you don't know. We started with a very small competition 12 years ago. It was exercise for bus stations and placard systems where people could hang some posters or say when parties are happening in their village and so on. So we developed a system that could be used around all the canton. It was the Canton St. Gallen in the south. And we find this kind of very thin 25 millimeters bent metal structure with a radius of 1 meter that is coming from the ground and taking this topography from the slope, because not every places are completely flattened, so you could use it in almost all kind of inclination of the street, and this metal would absorb exactly this form. For the station, you would have a very high bench. These are typical benches more from the south of Switzerland. It would be a carved system of wood without metal joints, so it would be just wood joinery. It would protect from side winds, and this metal structure would protect you from the sun and from the rain. This model could grow now, and there would be, in a moment, you see in the middle this kind of element that is put together that would be knitted in the middle and would pass some electric cables in order to hang a glass massive lamp that was produced in Portugal at the time. Here you see another competition. We won actually the first prize, but never was built. It was built the second prize after. It was a kiosk for the Lake of Zurich. It would be, as you see in the right image, you would have this kind of big umbrella during summertime. So this feeling of going to the lake and just open this big umbrella and be under it would be, for me as a Portuguese, the most connection you can have to the lake and to spend the time by the lake. In the winter, everything would be packed down, put it under this kind of textile and enclosed. It was a system of very big elements in metal that would protect this kitchen. So you have this kind of butterfly, this mutating element, or this kind of big tree in this exotic space near the Lake of Zurich. This was another competition that we also won in Basel at the time, a long time ago, for a community center to be able to make some concerts inside and to spend the afternoon. It was on old place where they played football. Actually, it was the first stadium in Switzerland, if I'm not wrong. It is completely deactivated. So I would like to present our series of projects under this title, Building Narratives. We find interesting to explain architecture through a narrative, or the way of creating a project through a narrative. We actually don't try to draw so much, but we kind of start the project with a text, or we try to explain ourselves what this building can be in a narrative way. So it's very easy to change the form, but this kind of narrative, or this idea of explaining a project, is kind of a fil rouge in this kind of creation, and this kind of form that is attached to this narrative is detached from this kind of line of discourse. So actually we'll see that our office doesn't really have a consensus language. We move out from language from project to project. So So I will show you a small intervention in the north of Portugal. You see an example of the 12th century of the Romanic in Portugal. It's a small cloister, Benedictine cloister in the north of Portugal. And you can see here this Benedictine cloister. Valencia is more towards the south or north in this side. This is Spain, the river that divides, or the border between Spain and Portugal. And this small cloister from the 12th century that dominated this area more or less here and more towards the mountains. And we were invited as part of, I believe, 12 architects that were meant to make interventions in the north of Portugal. And we got actually this space, but we got the parking slot. We denied that we wouldn't make any project in this parking slot. And I said, if we do, we will do in the cloister somehow. I don't know yet, but we would see. And it was a leitura de paisagem. It's like a reading of landscape. It's a kind of a difficult thematic, in a way, how you make interventions with 2,000 euros in a place, and still you can read somehow landscape. So you can see a bit how the situation is with these very rocky hills, kind of this forest, aqueduct, so water was being carried from the mountains towards the monastery, crossing this kind of cloister and going further until the river down. So it's still nowadays very, very cast away. And the interesting thing is about this aqueduct that is also a wall of this structure. In Portugal is very interesting how we deal with the patrimony, and the Portuguese state always defines very clearly a certain period and destroys everything towards this period. So even though this church was growing in a way somehow, they say this church is important, or the important consistency is from the 12th century, so they removed everything. So it's a position that the state has. It doesn't conserve these elements. I find it quite pity, because you don't see how the buildings develop over the years, and shows almost like a frame of something that we believe that it should be. So sometimes the patrimony that we have is full of these cosmetics. So what we offered this company that invited us was first to make a big plan of what is this cloister. And it was quite difficult to start a project having this thematic of a landscape. We decided to make the interventions, I will show you later on, interventions in this space, and related with this kind of chapel that is there. So after searching a lot what could be done in this place, I found in the old text that actually the first salmon and the first wild boar went to the friars of this cloister. So it was like a tax that the villagers needed to pay to this cloister. So every year, the first boar and the first salmon that was fished on the river, so mountain and river again, you were offered to the friars as a tax. So out of this, I thought that why don't we cook every year a boar and a fish? Because it's quite typical in Portugal that we do this kind of fest. So let's explain what is this place by cooking one wild boar from the mountain and the salmon. So we really see the range that this cloister had at the time. So we thought something a bit like a procession. It would be a kind of procession, a ritual that we would do every year, or the city would do every year, and we will give them the instruments for it. So this chapel is actually open every day in the year. So there is no key, just this amazing clean space with no religious objects in it. So we decided to provide them with the new objects that had this kind of ritual character, a bit between the profane and the religious character. So how do we cook, or you see in the image, how do we cook these two animals and still this church or this kind of chapel as again for one day of the year, this kind of religious objects. So here you see a bit the over-dimensioned pieces that we go a bit back to these religious objects. No, you see the cross, you see the baku, you see other elements that are necessary for a normal liturgic. So we do this kind of intervention. You see here this aqueduct is again the wall, and this is the first place where you enter this religious complex. And you see on the left side two objects made out of granite. These are really massive granite objects that were cut out, and they have no foundations on the ground. It's also forbidden to do. As soon as you do foundations on the ground, you need to make archaeological surveys. We wanted to avoid this, and we made this big gargoyle elements, or these big, huge stones that are kind of spread through the place, and that cannot be robbed, and at the same time hold this, here the boar and here the salmon. Two different stones, one coming from the side of Spain, another one from Portuguese side, you will see in the coloration of it. And these stones were treated in different ways. First, to be interlocked, so they cannot be moved away or not be robbed. And another way, they are treated with different ways. Like in Portugal, we spike the stone, we polish the stone, we flame the stone. So all this kind of working the stone, and that is changing through the centuries. Nowadays is quite common, this polished stone, but centuries ago it was just spiked stone. So you really see this whole palette of how can you treat a stone. So you see also that stone also is element as a joinery system, or as a heavy, big, like almost 200 kilo stone over a metal piece. So you work these stones as you would work a natural wall. So you put into force, you carve them, and you put things together. Here a bit a view from the top. So at the same time, this, for example, this firing place, it had the possibility to cook into the same place the boar during hours. So you are doing this ritualistic process. First, very silence, very how do you say, quite proper, as in a liturgic moment, and as the day is passing and the animals are being cooked, you have a more festive mood. So again, this change during the night or during the day. So you see here the two stones and these metal elements that are carved and joined together. And this cooking system, or this big, huge churrasco. Here you see the objects that you can use to help you on the process. And the kind of joinery. Here you see really how the two colors, the blue stone and this kind of salmon tone comes together. So in some moments, the stone is shown in a special way. Here more gray, it's a bit more bluish in reality. And you see the interlocked systems between them. Here, for example, where the rod is coming over and where you turn the bar. Then so there are some details that you don't see in the metal, for example, how to start this kind of white phosphorus to start the fire, so you really reduce to the minimum and use the elements as a way of expanding this opportunity and make it as a theatrical object. The next project that I will show is a project that I believe Piovenefabi also took part or exposed at the same time. I don't know if I'm wrong. This is a garage from a building from Gregotti in Lisbon. They actually start to make architecture expositions, and actually they got this huge, very difficult to control parking garage. So imagine making exposition in a garage place. So it was quite clear from the beginning that we need to deal with this huge space and to deal with this problem of the column. How this column can be helpful for us, how can it be an element that is not only a regular element in the space, and what can we do out of it. So we start to play with this idea, how can this column become something more, no? So we find this kind of image that shows a bit what is a column and what is an expanded column and how it can be helpful. So coming out of this, you know, this 17th century kind of dresses that take a lot of space, now how this kind of structure, or how can we expand and make this kind of pillar more interesting, and how it can become something useful. So for us, it was quite clear that it needs to become a ball. This kind of pillars will become these beautiful ladies with these different dresses, and you kind of use this opportunity to go into an exposition in a dark place, which is underground, for maybe 1 or 2 hours. I don't know if you want really to have a direction in this kind of space, but you want to go into this ball, and maybe you know these ladies, you go from lady to lady, you start to intercorrugate also, or you kind of make connections by your own in this exposition. It was, for me, it was like going into a garden and to really find new connections in the space. You also say the problematic here, how you serve these ladies, how you need to go and to serve them, and it's also a difficulty. So you see here the ground floor with a small reception, and this situation of the pillars now with the different kind of sizes. And what we gain from this structure is like having vertical exposition space and horizontal exposition space. So what you can do is make projections along the wall and showcase models or objects or drawings in horizontal form or in vertical way. And the dimensions of it allow, for example, to show very big pictures or a series of objects that you can go around and look at them, or tables that are the ones in gray in different heights, very low, middle, and high. So we make a kind of a system out of it that could be changeable by the curator, by Andrea Tavares and Diogo Seixas at the time. So here you see how we made this kind of big metal structures that would allow to then apply a frame over it, or apply over this frame a very thin surface that would allow to expose the project. So by doing this, you remove space to this garage, but actually creates a controlled environment. At the same time, we decided to create a kind of coordinate system, like you have in a garage. When you park your car, you know you park the car at A18 or A16. So we kind of reintegrate kind of numbers in order to in this paper of exposition, you can go to A18 and you know what you are going to see, for example. See a bit how the construction of this light structure was, and how you bind these kind of panels. So what you get before the exposition is done is this kind of bold space. You see here very low tables and other different sizes of these structures. And here somehow already the explanation. There's a bit this kind of airplane kind of text over this kind of layout over. And you see just these floating elements. It was sometimes as somebody wanted to see under the skirts of these elements. But it's kind of an invisible system where you just see this joinery of the plates. Here's just some impressions. The third project is again a project in Portugal. I have a kind of a big connection with this place. It's a space that I built for myself some years ago. And normally I live in a white house. And when I go on vacations, and normally when I go on vacations, I always go to this place. I have a dark house. So I live between this white house and black space. So we are going into the Açores. So for you to understand where the Açores are, on the right side you see Portugal. Here would be Canada and America. And we are here in these 9 volcanic islands that are called the Açores, and you see the European continental plate, the African one, and the American one. Here you see other islands that are part of this we call Macaronesia. Macaronesia goes actually a bit more down here. We see Madeira, and we see the Spanish islands, the Canary Islands. Then you would have another one that would be part of this called Macaronesia. No, they are all volcanic islands. And here you see, what you see is actually the ocean, but it's at the bottom floor of this ocean, at the underwater mountains. So here we are in Pico, Faial, Terceira, Graciosa, Flores, Corvo, São Miguel. So you really see this is the highest mountain in Portugal, even higher than the mountains in the continent. So these are about 2,300 meters from sea level. We have towards the bottom the same size, so we are talking almost like the Everest, from the bottom floor of the ocean to the top. Just that we kind of relate to this kind of geology that is underground. Some of them are quite active. São Jorge is having some problems, some shakes every day, at least 6-7 shakes a day. São Miguel is quite volcanic, and you can really leave this kind of volcan. Some years ago, if I'm not wrong, 20 years ago, there were, or even more, 30 years ago, there was a big expansion of Faial Island with big territory. So it's really an area that is really active volcanically. And for us to understand, and maybe I go a bit back towards here, the importance of the Açores during so for the discovery times, if you returned from India or from Asia, you cannot just go like around Africa and enter to Mediterranean or to Portugal. This is impossible. It would take ages. So what the discoverers learned is actually the currents and the wind carry you always to the Açores. So this point was almost the first time of Portuguese area where you would bring your richness. So at the time it was a cradle for richness. You see amazing monasteries. You would refresh with oranges and with fresh fruits. So this became very fast kind of, when you go out of Portugal and you continue to Brazil, or you continue to Africa or to the Indies, it would be a first step over. So you can imagine at the time how important this place was with spices and so on. During the war, no airplane could do from the Americas to Europe. They could not cross. So actually, all airplanes were landing in the Açores, because it's from Americas, from here or from Canada, you would not have tanks so big that you can carry and continue to Europe. So all these airplanes were stopping in Açores. Just for you to start off relating how important this space is. During the 19th century, Pico, or the main Açorian islands, were known by whaling. Whaling was forbidden in, I believe, in the 80s, so no more whales are being killed and processed, and they were using mainly the oils and the bones for fertilization and for oils for beauty and so on, or for lighting, for having lighting at home. So it was the only possibility for these persons that were living there to have a good income. The second one is wine, especially in Pico. It was really a very hard territory. This kind of landscape is, so to say, a constructed landscape, or is an artificial landscape. So you would need to pile stone by stone in order to grow things. And the best thing was to make wine, white wine especially, or wine with schnapps. So you have a stronger wine. And for you to imagine, this wine was arriving to Russia. And imagine it would be the most farthest way of producing wine. So they were producing wine at that age, and the wine would get amazingly good until it would arrive to Russia. So it was the most exotic one that you could at the time. They made a calculation, and if you put just these stones together, all this line of stones together, it go 4 times around the Earth, just to see the man job that it was needed in order to survive. So for me, it's quite difficult to relate with the Azores and this kind of architecture, because the architecture in the Azores is a bit a melting pot from regions, because the colonials that came to live in these areas, they would come from very different regions of Portugal, and you see in the Azores, based on the village, that are kind of some type of typologies that are repeated. And for me, I wanted to kind of make a house that is maybe related to a bit more Azores kind of view. So this kind of American presence in the Azores, especially in Terceira, was for me quite interesting. So this image fascinated me. This is like a bombardier from the Americans that somehow felt in this rural area, and you see all these kind of stone walls and this kind of very reduced archaic houses. Again, this very technological airplane. So actually the house comes exactly between this hybrid, between something very archaic and something very high-tech. So again, this time of the hybrids, you have in Portugal always these amazing maps from the discoveries with all these animals that are composed by many parts. This fascinated me somehow. And then another book that impressed me, and I find it has, I can understand the Azores, or at least Pico, in this kind of Easter Island, no? And the Rapa Nui, they always tell that the island is a boat. And exactly what I wanted to do, is like going on vacation and be constantly on a trip. So the process of going there, staying there, and then returning home, this is for me vacation, this is for me a trip. And this feeling of a trip and being in a house that is part of this trip was interesting. So I wanted my house to be a cockpit for this big boat behind me that I won't see. So just that you understand Pico, this is if you go around, it's around 100 kilometers by car. And what you see here is the last eruptions. The house, I will call it a house, it's called a adega, and I will go a bit later to that. Is exactly in this last eruption in the 18th century. So here you see the Pico, the big volcano with another volcano on top, and you see here the house and the ocean, and these kind of villages that are always happening in a line. So you see very clearly where the cities or these kind of small villages are developing. They are always around this national street that are marked in black. So I'm between, or the house is in between this black line and the water level. So something in between. This is all protected area, and normally is only for production of wine. So this kind of place is actually maximum 35 square meters, and is as a help, or is a building that is an agricultural building that helps this this terrain. Here you see a bit the geology of this area, mainly near the coast. No, this kind of prismatic lava. You can imagine the hot lava hitting the water and creating this kind of black crystals. So all the project was developed mainly in this model, 1:500, or 1:200. I'm sorry. So I start to organize this small building, 35 square meters, directly in this model. So all decisions were taken here. So it's very reduced to this roof and this kind of geological, how do you say, it's like an extraction of the terrain. So it's everything going to be made out of this lava stone. So here you see a bit the terrain and the new interventions that is a new staircase, also in lava stone, that is going around the limits of the terrain. And then you are arriving into the house, and the house is, or this space is one system towards the front, quite exposed, and the second one, which is a bathroom that is recessed in the mountain. It's everything inside of this part is everything in stone, black stone, and this one is exposed towards the landscape. And the house has this name, Adega Baía da Arruda. So it's from here, from this point, you just see this bay. You don't have no neighbors. Next neighbors are South Pole. So what you do by doing this, by entering here and going up, is creating a kind of scenery which is making you look into this house from different parts. So you kind of go away and go near to this house, and then you go farther away and you look into this vineyard. This is the character of the house, seen from the bottom. Then another view. And even if it is the same facade, the facade is changing by the topography itself, and the direction of the sun, and so on. And it has this very big expanded roof. It's a cedar wood, so mainly in Portugal we brought from Japan cedar wood, so we have the same wood as Japanese, and this is amazing wood to build houses, because they are extremely light, and they are from the composition perfect for the Azores, so they can absorb the right amount of humidity, and also the cedar is not the favorite food for kind of these wood animals, so it's repelling. Actually, we use as a repellent. So all this stone was carried up towards the slope. Paint is part of the process in Pico. And actually we tried to use the less amount of material that was coming from outside the island. So here you see a bit more coming around towards the house. It's an impression at night. So also this facade is shrinking until a human kind of size. So from under it looks much bigger than from the top. Then you enter in this very, very cornered entrance that protects you from the wind, and you enter in a very, very small proportion. You see how the stonework was made, and the big roof. The roof was treated with bitumen. So we just took a normal cedar wood and painted with bitumen. So it was a process how we did boats, especially in Aveiro. We just painted all this stuff until there's like 3 centimeters of thickness of this impermeable material. So this kind of space, so it's not really a house, it's this called of adega, Adega in Pico has a bit a different meaning of only a winery house. It's also a place where the person who treats the vineyards, which he can stay on weekend or in the end of the day overlooking his work. So for me it was clear that it's not a typical house, it's more an assembly place. And the quite interesting things about persons of Azores, they really don't like the ocean. That's why we put them, when we sit around, we have always our back to the ocean. But the beautiful thing is when you sit here and somebody is here, I look through this person into the ocean. When this person is here, he looks through me into the ocean. So you have this possibility of not looking at the ocean, but looking into the eyes of another person with the ocean behind. So this is became a possibility of meeting persons and to share wine and to share other stuff. And then again, this house has this interior part, this more internal part that is behind this kind of paravent, this kind of wood stone doesn't show this mountain part. So actually, people when come there, they don't understand where the bathroom is or if this house is bigger or not. It's kind of something mysterious. But you actually look into this this wall that is changing. The center is free, so there is no column in the center now. Hermes, no column in the middle. So you really use this middle as a place to put yourself. So your verticality in this point overlooks this space. So you took over the importance of this pillar by yourself. When you are around the house, you are related to the walls. When you are in the middle of the house, you are the center point of the house. This is the relation that you have. So all these houses based on one material is like a theater. It has the same character, so pavement, walls and ceilings are treated the same way. And then you have some exceptions. These door handles are actually whale bones. So from the 80s, there are still some maxillar parts, and I found somebody that could make this intarsia made out of these whale bones. So it's the only white element in the house beside this table and this lamp. So there are only 3 elements there. And then the light is, at the time, were the first LEDs, so it's almost like a candle light only. It's a view from the kitchen and to this kind of vegetation there. And the view from the bath into the landscape. And these pillars have a kind of a shape like this. And they are structural, and at the same time they carry the electricity to the top part. It's very, very, very narrow. It's not quite understandable, but it's you have a structural glass in the front. Now we come back to Switzerland. It's a project invited a competition for the ASK. It's an economical school in St. Gallen. Near to this amazing building from Walter Maria Forderer. So the wish from this university, ASK, was to create a study case, this learning center. So extend with a third building this ensemble. And for us it was very clear what we needed to do, and it came out how we make a campus, how we expand a campus, and how we create something out of something that is existing, it has quality. So this kind of concrete and basement and this kind of structure system was kind of interesting for us. So we wanted to work with these elements. Here under you see the extension of Herzog de Meuron, one of the first projects with the landscape architect. Now I'm missing the names, I'm sorry. Gunther Vogt, thank you. So you see now the extended part of Helvetia here, and then this building from Walter Maria Vorderen, a second building that is a library, and the area that was designated for the competition was more or less this part here. So what we try to do is to define very clearly this kind of campus area, and to say, okay, we are going to make a kind of a temple area, so a temple of wisdom. So this kind of thinking, what is a learning center nowadays? And it was kept quite open in the kind of spaces that we wanted, but we kind of needed to relate what is a campus nowadays and what is a learning center. So for us, it was clear it was a bit this kind of Greek store, a place where you go there and you change your knowledge, and there should not be any more this hierarchy between professor and student, and it's a place where you share your knowledge. So maybe students are teaching professors there, sometimes there are other moments there, public is coming there, and you are kind of creating a place where you can share this knowledge. So again, as I was telling, there is this concrete embassment and a concrete structure that I will show you next. That was the main thing. So a very transparent building with a structure. Here you see again this building from Walter Maria Vorderen, Helvetia, the library, and the new building that was connected with this library. So the building was developing more or less like this, and it would become louder in this under part and would become more silent. So this kind of division in a continuum shape would define the spatial. And then there would be firecases in glass in this area. Some double areas here and there. And what we do is actually, during the process, to negate this foyer. Our building should not be a foyer, or shouldn't have a foyer, it's just a pure structure. And what we do is use the foyer from the other building and kind of make this injection in the, so it's like making an insection on this kind of system, so people would pass through a garden into a continuous structure. This was based on modules that you could rent or you could activate with the app. So you activate A12 and then you have light, then you can project stuff, or you can rent 2 modules or 3 modules, and people would have an app and know what is happening in which one of these modules. So this building is kind of a structure, a being out of nerves and bones. Actually, these structures inside are carrying air and electricity, so you don't have visible elements vertically. And here you see how we solved all these techniques based on these columns. So it would be column 60 by 60, where the air would be crossing, as in these bones. So the air would be crossing these bones, and then there will be a subdivision of the system. Here's like the building in the different levels. And for us, we find interesting this image of the US Constitution and what is a building made out of cables, actually cables that you don't see. So in the way to do this building a structure, we kind of use these knots in 3 directions and put pressure in these 3 points and turn the system 45 degrees. This makes a rigid system, and at the same time you don't need cores in the middle that are in concrete. So you allow this kind of visual kind of connection between the rooms with just glass panels. So here you start to understand how this pillar is made with the air system, where the rods are coming for the pressure, the white points, and you see how it is interlocking. And then these modules had light on top, LED, flat LEDs, and acoustic system and rollers, so you could roll down these panels when you need. all the air would mainly come from the bottom and then received on top through these elements. So you have a kind of fake pavement in this part. So you can change things, you can apply new cables, because it's a polyvalent kind of space. So here you see what would be this building in a night now, how it is these pillars, and how we cut these pillars to become kind of new way of capitals. So when I show you the image, you cut these 45 degrees, and what it stays is kind of a capital system. Then this kind of modules that you could rent, it's a bit the character that you would have. This is the aspect from outside, and with this kind of entrance system. And this garden from where you come from this foyer into this temple. Again, this kind of office that are 45 degrees towards the facade. And the idea is to make this building as open as possible, as chaotic as possible, as it's like a big workshop. It's always changing into place. It has only this hardware, and the software are we who are changing inside the space. For the last, I will show you a project that took us 10 years, more or less, since we founded the office. It's Alta Reithalle in Aarau. It was a riding hall for the military. Actually, it's one of the last cities in Switzerland that has military in the very city center. It is a huge quartier that is still in use. And in this part, we have this riding hall school for the military that was deactivated, as the cavalry is no longer for use and happily for the military system. So competition was made for theater in this beautiful end of 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. It grew in two parts, one first part here and then a second part, and all was divided by this kind of Kontrollbrücke. It's like a bridge from when the generals told the militaries which kind of exercise they need to do. So from this point, they controlled the two areas. So everything was built for horses. So actually, that you understand, we are smaller than this kind of element here. So this kind of a protection in wood for the horses not to hit the wall. So it's quite a big structure that has this amazing wood structure on top. So free spanning, 24 meters. And then free from one facade to another. So we came out of Mendrisio at the time, and for us was clear when they asked to make 2 rooms out of it, we said quite clear we could not build a wall in this. So we wanted to have as much space or free space as possible in between these 2 walls and divide it in a special way. So here you see a bit already the building. So you kind of see what is the new theater or the new symphonic orchestra in the end. So it will be this kind of black world into this old cavalry world. And for us it's quite difficult also from the thematic how you change cavalry, so for horses, into a good quality acoustically space for theater and orchestra. So we are talking about 2 worlds, the world of shit and animals, sorry when I tell it like this, and the world of precision and the perfect sound of acoustics. So this, in between there's a huge gap, and that's always a problem how we do renovations or how we transform these kind of buildings into something new. And the only validity for this building was the cubature of this building, the amount of air in this space allowed us to make this symphonic orchestra. Other way, it would be strange to turn a cavalry space into a theater. So what we do is maintain the walls and almost all the dirt and all the ceilings, making a new double ceiling for insulation, acoustic insulation mainly. Intervene in the windows with new elements and free everything, even this control bridge. And what we do is kind of a tent that is movable from this point to that point. So what you try to create is from the city, so no gap, no stairs, no different continuous level. You entered from a city into the theater, into a kind of tent. And these are all possible entrances. So this element is a bit like a trombone. You can adjust from one side to the other one. So you can create very big spaces or very small spaces. So you see here what we need to do, this kind of acoustic windows that came, and some of the elements were prolonged to the bottom in order to enter sceneries and big elements for the theater. And this double roof that is solved with a water channel system. So you don't see really this kind of new 1 meter thick ceiling. Here's the view from the other side. It's anodized metal for 45 dB. Here you see how the light is integrated in the building, so only these door handles have light, and they can also show the entrance where you need. So the building has no extra lighting. You see a bit the character. And what we wanted is exactly this kind of democratic, artistic space. So you enter from the city, and what you see is a huge backstage. So visitors and actors are on the same level, the same place, and what maybe divides them is this just huge curtain that is, or this huge tent inside that is moving from place to place. So the possibilities in this building are quite different than a normal theater. So you can engage much more directly with the visitor and the other way around. Then what we did is 2 big concrete buildings on the very extreme points for wardrobes and technical areas. Then we have this double ceiling and 4 new traces where all the technique runs. All the roof was kept as it was. All the walls maintain its own dirt. Actually, for the acoustic, is very good. What we redid is this new pavement and these side walls in black, where the air system and the electricity systems are. So you can pull from the wall directly energy. You see a bit how these rooms are inside, because they train with violinos and other kind of instruments inside this space. There is a huge airspace around it. So it's all about how you don't hear when you are training or when the solist is singing, that you don't hear in the concert space at the same time. At the same time, these buildings were activated. It's all black concrete, 6% pigment. So we worked with the acoustics, so you can profit from the sound, from the natural sound, without having to reinforce it acoustically or electrically. You will see a bit more the details. And here you get this character of these 2 big black monoliths in the room. So this is actually when you see the orchestra, the theater, normally they use these kind of systems, but for 1 hour you look at this monolith. So you see this new world, this technical world, this black world, this undefined world. This black is new, is this kind of new boat inside this structure, and then the rest is kept untouched. Here you see how the air is coming into the room from the sides, all the technical electricity and the elements on the side, and how this foyer was done. It was created with a German company, and we needed to adjust this. It was made kind of a catenary system, so you could adjust even the size of the foyer. So it's everything changing. It's like a big scenery. Something that is Schinkel did it a lot. Person did work already with this thematic of the textiles, of reinventing new space in that. So this is exactly what we got. It's the smallest foyer that you get. So you enter in this kind of tent and really don't realize what is happening on the top. This is the foyer seen from the outside, so no division. And it's made out of 3 textiles for 3 different acoustics. You see how the ceiling is solved with this new water channel made in copper. And a bit the character of these wardrobes. These spaces that are not seen from behind, looks a bit this Coco Chanel kind of staircase for the divas. To this metal world, again the black world. It's interesting kind of system. So we work always with all materials more or less in this kind of situation. The good thing is when you enter, you don't see yourself. So you need to put, only when you sit, you can look straight into the mirror. So you never see your reflection. And a bit of character doing now, I guess. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ivo. Does anyone have questions?
First off, thank you. I found the slight sense of humor was very engaging. I was just curious about the narrative and the interaction that has with the client, and whether the client tends to disagree with the narrative ever, and how you would handle something like that in that scenario.
So at least we make a lot of public buildings. No, I showed you a small other project, but mainly we make competitions for the public end. This has good things and bad things, but mainly good things. And you need to treat your client as a baby. The baby doesn't really know what he wants. So you start a theater 10 years ago as a theater, and in the end it's a symphony orchestra. So you need every time to present the project. Many times you need always to present the project from the beginning, because they never understand. You need always to repeat yourself, always bring it, and always, because the only ones that are staying during the 10 years is me and Peter. All the other persons are changing. So persons in the public system are changing, and you need always to explain. So it's a kind of, the narrative way is the best way for us to explain a project and to make it understandable. Explaining architecture to persons that are not architects, and you need for this kind of buildings politicians, you have engineers, you have technical guys. So you need to understand, you deal more with persons that are not architecture educated. So you need kind of, the narrative way is the easiest way to make this architecture like perceivable. Can I say it like this? So I think it's the only way, but you always need to repeat yourself. This is the only connection that I have with the clients, is by repetition and insisting and showing and kind of calming down. You need always to calm down. Is everything good? You need always to present like this. Don't know if it helps. They are hungry.
Thank you for the presentation. I appreciated like a lot of the metaphorical references as well. I thought it was poetic. I was wondering, a lot of the projects are quite dark. If you could speak to your, I don't know, maybe philosophy about light or darkness and why darkness over maybe transparency, let's say.
Let's say it like this. It was not on purpose. Normally we are very colorful. But what I showed was exactly a building that was in a volcanic lava landscape. So pitch black, there is only black around you. So naturally the building takes over this kind of blackness. So it's a kind of exercising of looking the landscape, which is a bad color to look into a landscape. When you have these amazing colors over you, you don't want to have another color. So it's like looking into a camera, no? You have this black camera and through there you look into these colors. It becomes a bit like all these colors reflect. Actually, this house is not black when you live in it. There's a reflection from the green, violet tones, orange, the color is always changing. So actually the world is black. What gives us colors is light. So it's quite interesting to be in a neutral space overlooking a landscape. For the case of theater, it's always black. You cannot go away from the black. So naturally all the technical stuffs are black and you have just metal confronting them. And what we left is the old house as it is, that is recognizable, that it's remains as a recognizable space, but what is new is black and is technical. So yeah, for these two buildings we work with black. I like black. I cannot hear.
Thanks for the lecture.
Thank you.
I would like to ask about the use of references as if on a smaller scale, like exhibition in the parking lot. I found it interesting how you downscale it to a simple column and kind of define it as an archetype and then like cover up a bit more with complexity and your own perception of how it should turn out to be. But it's quite a long way. So how do you not lose the genuine idea and where is the point when it is defined completely and you turn the page back and see that you have to stick to your concrete decision, let's say. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's quite a valid question, and actually I have a lot of problems with references, or even with images in the beginning of a project, because they are always lies. And I think you need to deal with this image quite carefully and with a critical view. So actually, maybe something that helps this narrative, but actually we don't overdo or don't try to overuse this kind of reference, because then it becomes something completely dull, and it's not that what we plan to do. Naturally, this image are happening from the architectural story, so you can relate to them, but you can also put them away or cast them away. I think it's a way of learning something, and what I like from this image is what I can read from this image, not necessarily the visual part of it or the referential part of it. So I think this is one point. And then I like kind of buildings that have more thematics, that in the end you don't really know what it is. It's a melting pot of stuff. You can, this building in the Azores, the person says it's a lighthouse, others say it's a place from where you look the whales, others, or there is this kind of roof that is kind of this kind of shell animals. So it can be read from many ways, and I kind of like that is not a very determined, defined kind of thing. I believe this building will be something completely different in 50 years. I don't know how it will stay. I like this riding hall, it's not for eternity that it will be a riding hall, but still you can carry on, and I find this is a quality that things are not very defined, and it stays in this kind of cloud. But the cloud is still a cloud, it keeps itself together. Somehow it doesn't fall down out of nothing. So I like this kind of cloudness in undefinition, or kind of very defined, but not perceivable from all sides.
I just had a question leading on to what you were talking about now with definition, and specifically with this project, when you were designing it to be an orchestra but knowing in 50 years it will be used for something different. How strong of an idea was that when you were designing, or I guess if you could elaborate.
Exactly. You try always to do the less possible to maintain the original space. So what we are trying to do is letting this wood ceiling be as it was and keeping the walls as they were. And I think the only thing that stays in the end is this kind of air in between these two concrete blocks. And these concrete blocks, we won't know, maybe if some big catastrophe would happen, you wouldn't know were these two monoliths before or were after this kind of riding wall. So I find this kind of mysterious, this kind of almost religious object or kind of vocational objects that are there are quite interesting stuff. Maybe it will be a church, maybe it will be a meeting point, I don't know what it will be, but it will change in its own way. Mm-hmm.
Thanks a lot, Ivo. I have two questions. The first one is, do you rent the house in Azores? No, and the second one, I really appreciated, I'm interested in what you said, when you said that you try to avoid like a predetermined taste or a predetermined language in a building, and your buildings were going to be very different from one to each other, and I was wondering if you could address further this idea or this intention.
The question with the language it troubles me, because I cannot really translate it. I find we start projects from different sides or different approaches, and by that you get like different languages, or you have different interests and so on. Unfortunately, I don't have a language. Maybe I'm trying to search for it, maybe not. I don't know. I cannot tell. Yes, and the other one, yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Questions? More?
I'm hungry.
Okay, so we are done. Let's have lunch. Thank you.
Thank you.